So far, their ranks had been filled by a certain predictable class. The poor, the outsider, the social and political misfit, the maltreated sailor. But there was another disaffected and powerless group to draw from as well: women. One was particularly nasty. Her name is Anne Bonny.
Anne Bonny was the illegitimate daughter of a solicitor. She rather disgraced her father by running off with a man who describes as being not worth a groat. I think he was a sailor, and disappointed her parents' expectations. And it also mentions in the story that she had a ferocious temper. I mean, there's one anecdote that she actually sliced off a woman's nose in an argument.
In New Providence, Anne abandons her bland sailor husband in favor of a racy pirate called Calico Jack Rackham.
The appeal of piracy to women would have been huge. I mean, it was all about escape. It was about escaping the confines of home and children. And young girls would often dream about running off to sea in the same way that boys would.
In no time, Anne and Calico Jack steal a ship in Nassau Harbor and sail off on account. From one of their first prizes, a Dutch ship, they take on board a handsome young crewman who catches Anne's fancy. But something seems faintly unusual about the lad, and he is odd. In fact, he's a girl. A circumstance she confides only to Anne. The crewman's name is Bonny Read.
One of the points of similarity between Bonny Read and Anne Bonny's story is that Bonny Read was also illegitimate. She, however, was raised as a boy from birth because her brother had died. Her brother, who was legitimate, had died, and her mother was sort of passing Mary off as her brother to her mother-in-law in order to get some sort of family income and support. And at the age of 13, her mother had fallen on hard times and sends Mary off to be a kind of serving man, serving boy to a Frenchwoman.
Fed up with the circumscribed life allowed to 18th century women, Bonny Read ran away to the War of Spanish Succession, dashing as a cavalryman through Flanders. After that fray, she posed as a sailor on a Dutch ship, the very one that brought her to Calico Jack and Anne Bonny. The question is, how did she manage to conceal herself from her crewmates for so long? Nicky Alford has been sailing tall ships for 10 years.
I think disguise would have been very difficult. I guess they could have cut their hair short, worn loose clothing. Mostly it's your hands and your feet get very rough and worn. Everyone runs barefoot everywhere, and it's all rope. And your hands, of course, from pulling on ropes, it's like a friction burn. And you get very hard calluses on the palms of your hands and on your fingers. That's about the most change, apart from, of course, big upper body muscles. Everyday life would have been quite hard, the actual personal side of it, like going to the toilets. You'd possibly get away with it at night by creeping up forward onto what were the heads, is the cat heads. They're big wooden pieces of timber where the anchors are hung, and hung yourself off there like the rest of the men. Just go at night rather than in the day.
At sea, Bonny and Read are beyond the reach of society's conventions. They could be as nonconformist and as fierce, as unladylike as they pleased. Off the coast of Jamaica, all three are captured, with only the women putting up much resistance. The men are drunk. Later, Anne scorned Jack Rackham. "If you had fought like a man," she said, "you need not have been hanged like a dog."
They were as fierce as any of the male pirates that you can imagine.
When they were finally trapped by a British frigate and their ship was being overwhelmed, their crew fled below decks, leaving only the women on deck, fighting like demons.
Anne and Mary are brought to trial at the Admiralty Court, Spanish Town, Jamaica. This was news.
Well, when Mary Read and Anne Bonny were tried in 1720, it caused a huge sensation both in Jamaica and back in England. It was the first time that there was hard, concrete evidence that women actually had been pirates. I mean, there was plenty of sort of stories about them and ballads about them, but this was the first time that we knew they really existed. And it was as if a fantasy had been made real.
Evidence offered in court passes almost immediately into legend and folklore.
Just 1 and 36 months she braved the tempest cold, and always done her duty did
The witnesses seem to sense they are part of history.
Both of the women were very profligate, cursing and swearing much. They did not seem to be kept or detained by force.
The two women wore men's trousers. Each of them had a machete and a pistol and cursed and swore at the men to murder me. I knew they were women by the largeness of their breasts.
Neither Anne nor Mary testify in their defense. Why? Because they have a trump card. They can plead their bellies.
They were tried, they were sentenced to hang, but they couldn't hang the ladies because they were both pregnant. And under English common law, that was something that you couldn't do. And so they escaped the hangman's noose. Mary Read had her infant, and they both died of fever in the tropics in Jamaica. Anne Bonny, no one knows what happened to her, but she didn't hang.